Well, hi, everybody. This is Rob Godlewski. I'm your podcast host for the Think Small podcast. And today we have as our guest Cameron Boland. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Keymark. And Cameron, your business is right in the thick of everything AI. So tell us a little bit about how you got started with this business. Tell me about, what your business is and does, and let's start from there.
Great, I'd be happy to. And first off, thank you for having me on. This is an exciting opportunity. So at Keymark, we've actually been around for a good while. We've been around since 1996. We were founded, and in the right around the 2000 time frame, we actually started organizationally with OCR products. And OCR products are software tools that allow you to, at scale, pull data off of paper documents at the time. So scan documents and pull data off of those documents. So that doesn't sound a whole lot like AI, but if you fast forward to today, over the 25 years since we started with those types of products, that's become the foundation of what's called IDP now, Intelligent Document Processing. So we've been
Okay.
involved with these types of technologies and the concepts around them really since their inception.
Wow.
But as the market has changed, as the tools have changed, the business problems are largely the same, but we've just got this great set of AI-enabled tools now that allow us to do what we used to do better, faster, cheaper, and easier.
And that's what you do for your customers or clients is enable that AI readiness into and deploy it in their organizations, correct?
Absolutely. So we sell and service those types of tools. We do the implementations. We do all the engineering around it to make sure that we're looking at the right business problems and solving the right problems for the customer. The whole goal is to create efficiency and to give an ROI on the work that we do.
I love that statement you just made, and that is solving problems. That's one thing that I do a lot with in my business with Chief Outsiders is getting a business to understand that they're not just describing their business as what they do, but the problems they solve for their customers. I think that's a key differentiating point. So well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if we're not solving problems, there's really no reason for a customer to talk to us, right? They've got everything cooking along and everything's great and couldn't be better, then there's really not much of a place for us. But the reality is, no businesses don't have problems. Everybody's
Yeah.
got areas that they can improve, and so that's what we do.
So it's kind of interesting. You've been involved in this business or the business was founded almost 30 years ago,
Hmm.
way before AI was cool.
Yeah.
And when did you start with the business? Have you been with the business that long?
Not quite that long. I started in 2001, so right
Okay,
going on 25 years now.
25 years. Wow. So you've definitely seen some ups and downs and some periods of rapid growth, but probably periods of maybe plateauing or even contraction of revenue, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long and exciting ride, but there definitely have been some ups and downs. The software and services we provide are what are really considered to be enterprise class tools. So these are not tools that are going to be used by a consumer. It's really business to business type of work.
Sure.
And the projects can be quite large. Certainly, seven-figure projects are not uncommon. And so as we grew and the scope and scale of our projects grew, um, some of the risk also grows, right? Because when you start having lots of basing your business on large projects, if those large projects don't come in, then you can really find yourself in a bit of a bind, particularly in the early days. And so the thing that comes to mind is the 2008 financial crisis. We do a lot of business with banking. We do a lot of business in real estate, mortgage processing, that sort of thing.
Oh,
And when the bottom fell out in the mortgage industry, not only did it stop those projects that we had going in that space, there was a general tightening of credit. And our projects are typically capitalized for our customers. And so capital markets tightened up, dried up really, and really that put a halt on all of our kind of ongoing projects and any sales processes, of course, were really nipped in the bud as well.
so the financial crisis really impacted your business. How
Absolutely.
in not a positive way. How did you navigate the business through that? Not only from from a revenue generation standpoint, but also from a more human capital standpoint from the employee side.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge. As with any small business, we were founder owned, founder led, and certainly there were folks who, just intentionally didn't take salary and that sort of thing, so that we could keep some of the employees still there. Eventually, we did have to make some tough choices, and that did yield a bit of a staff reduction. But the way we really navigated it, I think, goes back to our basic business philosophy that we are very relationship driven. We have strong relationships with our customers. We don't want to be transactional. When we bring a customer on, I've got some that have been around longer than I have. So using the same tools and same relationships for over 20 years. So that allowed us to keep working with some of those customers, just making sure that the systems they already had in place were running smoothly, helping them gain efficiencies so that as the market deteriorated for them, they could try to be more efficient. So it was really those relationships and the fact that we provide what I think is exemplary service that allowed us to hang on to those existing customers. And it was that existing customer base that really got us through the financial crisis, so that we were around to be able to start picking back up when the markets picked back up.
For sure. And I can imagine where a lot of their products and services you sell, a lot of the software that you sell, the problems that they solve are related to efficiency and productivity. So I'm sure that had a lot to do with you keeping those customers through a very challenging time.
Yeah, it sure did. It's the type of thing that if we help our customers help their customers faster and more efficiently, then they're bringing in that revenue. They're keeping a happy client base. And back to the ROI point, it really makes it kind of a no-brainer to continue working with us in those types of situations.
Right, right. So you were fortunate in that aspect. Tell me about, the positive flip side of that is periods of expansive growth. So tell me about a period where that is occurring. Hopefully that's going on in your business right now, but you know, plateauing or declining sales is one thing, but rapid growth brings in a whole lot of different challenges into a small business. Tell me about a period where you experienced rapid growth and how you had to navigate that.
Sure, we're actually in one of those periods now, and what those
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, the AI marketplace is really exploding, and the
Yeah.
fact that we've been doing these things for such a long period of time, even before they were all AI, we we're still attacking the same problems, has really created an impetus in the marketplace to look at problems in a new way. There were all kinds of things that maybe we would have looked at 10 years ago or 5 years ago and said, that's just too challenging right now. The technology isn't there. It's not worth it to try to do all the work you'd have to do to fix this particular process. But now
Hmm.
the tools are becoming smarter and so much easier to implement and so much faster to iterate on, to create new versions and that sort of thing. Problems that used to be inaccessible are now accessible. And so that's really driving a lot of growth. And we're seeing that manifest itself not only in new business and new types of business, but we're also seeing it in picking up the pieces from some of our competitors that maybe aren't adapting as well to this new market. And so that's one of the areas that's very challenging um, to navigate is what happens when you're growing and, for example, you purchase a competitor. How do you integrate those people? How do you take those folks on and their customers, integrate them into your culture without ruining your own culture?
Right.
We feel our culture is why we're successful. And so as we pick up some of these other businesses, which grow our own business, give us more work to do, but we also have people that we really want to help grow internally, right? These new team members, we're trying to bring into our new to them way of doing things that we know to be successful. And that's a really knotty problem to solve.
I can also imagine that the self-directed nature of these new AI tools, meaning anybody can go out there and sign up for their own business account or their own personal account and start driving the tool themselves. Have you seen that impact your business yet as someone who's implementing those AI tools for a business?
Yes, we've seen it actually in a couple of ways. Number one, we're obviously adopting those tools as well. And so we're able to do things faster than we used to be able to. But we're also
Okay.
seeing the kind of DIY stuff crop back up in the market.
Exactly.
And
Right.
and so we'll see, smart folks that have a good grasp of a business problem, and they'll go out and they'll cobble together some AI tools and say, see, I can pull all the data off this particular document. And that's something we've been doing forever. And they can show that to their boss or whomever. But what they don't necessarily always realize is that there's more to it than just that. And so we're running in a sales environment into situations where people are able to demo something that looks great that they built internally and over the weekend, rah rah. But when you try to run 10,000 documents a day through that solution, all of the warts are going to come out, right? You're going to find out all the things that you didn't think about. Well, we've been doing these types of things for 20, 25 years, just with different tools. So we kind of know where those pitfalls are. And that
Sure.
creates a problem because it really slows down the sales process. You have to not only convince folks that you're the right ones to do the job, but now you're competing against, well, my IT guy made this over the weekend. Why is it going to take you 8 weeks to get this implemented? Well,
Right.
it's all those other things. And so now we have to have that conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do a lot of speaking to business leader groups, and AI is just the topic of the day.
Mhm.
And to your point, people are doing a lot of DIY work out there, but they're pretty quickly seeing that
Yeah.
they don't necessarily trust the first response they're getting, or they don't know what to do with the first response they're getting, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's absolutely true. There was a recent study released by MIT, or a paper, I should say, and in 24 in the beginnings of 25, something like 85% of all AI projects failed. And the reason they failed,
85%.
85%. And the reason that they are failing is really twofold. Number one, it's all those things that the people doing the implementations don't know, right? Because they're not business process experts. Maybe they know their own business, but they don't have the experience to know where all the pitfalls are when applying software to their business. But it's also the case that people are attacking the wrong problems. They're spending money on problems that maybe occur infrequently. They're really annoying, but they occur infrequently. So they try to solve that, but where's the money in that? It comes back to the ROI. If you're solving
Yeah.
a problem that doesn't have business benefit and return value, money dollars to the business, then you're solving the wrong thing, and nobody's going to let that continue on.
And
And
that's where a strategic AI partner like Keymark comes in, right?
Absolutely, because we are willing to say that this isn't the right problem to apply technology to because there's no return for you. However, this other thing that you're not thinking about, which we've seen elsewhere and done other times, does have an ROI, and here's why, and here's how.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
really
interesting.
having the breadth of experience to see a lot of different businesses. Everybody's business is unique, and they'll be the first to tell you that. But the reality is, accounts payable is accounts payable for the most part. And so you can get 80% of the way there by kind of knowing best practices and then just tailoring it to the specific um, company or business that you're working with.
I love the DIY analogy, and essentially that's why there still are home improvement contractors and places like Lowe's and Home Depot that support and educate and train folks on DIY because there's been a lot of people that have busted pipes in their front yard doing
That's
a
right.
doing a lawn improvement project. I mean, sorry to make a simple analogy like that, but that's
Sure.
what's going on today in business.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the things that people don't think about are not thought about because they're not obvious.
Right.
If you have if you're using a large language model or a visual model or something like that that you're paying by the token for, how many tokens is processing an invoice going to take? Do you really know? And so you may build something out that is going to cost you a ton if you do it the wrong way.
Right.
There may also be situations where, these are cloud-based tools, a lot of them. So you're pushing your data out, and now you no longer have control of it. Who's got it? Who's working with it? Who's doing what with it? Who can see it? So there are privacy issues. There are business security issues. There's all kinds of these things that kind of go around the problem that you're trying to solve that you still have to think about.
Right. There's a lot of questions out there that individual users or small business users just aren't thinking about
Right.
until they get into it and realize, oh shoot, I should have called Cameron and Keymark in the first place.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Because the time to find out that you've made a mistake is before you make the mistake. You really don't want to find it out, a year down the road when some business critical information or some PII type of information, or if you're in the medical space, some HIPAA protected information gets out in the wild. Then it's
That's
too
very
late.
true. Yeah. Cameron, something we chatted about on our first conversation was, and I found this really interesting coming from you, and that is your firm and you personally value so much your interpersonal human to human relationships. And yet your business is in there implementing AI tools.
Mhm.
And I found that really interesting. Tell us more about your focus on your human connections with your customers.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier that we have some customers that we've had for 20 plus, even 25 plus years. And that comes from building those personal relationships with our clients. What we've found is that when you are working on a project, every project is going to have some problems. But if you've got a good relationship, then you work together to solve those problems in a fair
Right.
and equitable way. And you get past them and you get the job done. And so with our customers, that's why we've always taken the approach of we want to be a trusted partner, a trusted advisor, somebody that they're willing to just pick up the phone and brainstorm because they know that if it's not a problem we can solve or it's not in our line of business, we'll still have a conversation with them. And then maybe we can find them somebody who can solve that problem.
Mm,
Maybe we can just give them an idea through conversation, and that interaction doesn't yield new business, but it yields a stronger relationship that we can work together going over time. And then, turn that inward. We have to have those kind of relationships with our own personnel and with each other within the company. Our
mm.
average tenure here on the technology side is well over 10 years. And that's unheard of in the technology space.
It is. Technology operators, have the opportunity to jump around and jump to different roles and higher paying roles. So that's I got to hand it to you. That's a great level of tenure for keeping people on board.
Yeah, and that's been great for the business, and we compensate well. That's just a reality in order to keep good people. But we know that it's
Sure.
better to keep good people than to have a bunch of less expensive people in a revolving door, because you lose
Very
all
true.
of that cultural feeling that we've striven so hard to build, and you lose all of that knowledge of customers and of technology and what has and hasn't worked in the past. So making sure that we're always supporting each other, that if somebody's running into a problem, somebody else will just pitch in, whether it's their project or not, to help solve those problems. Because again, we're helping each other, we're a team, and that includes the customer. And really, when everybody has those relationships, you end up getting good outcomes.
And at least so far, that is not something that's easily duplicated in a large language model, right? Those human
That's right.
interactions and
That's
those
right.
those one-on-one conversations that someone just wants to reach out to you for advice and counsel, and they know that you know them,
Yep.
and you're going to advise them the right way.
Yeah, that's entirely true. As a matter of fact, for example, our help desk, when a customer calls with a software problem, they don't get a bot; they get a person.
Huh.
And so even our support in a lot of organizations is sort of an entry point to get to professional services or to something that's perceived as a higher level job,
Sure.
but not here. Our support people typically do not ever move out of support. If they want to, we make internal opportunities available, but generally speaking, our support people have the same type of tenure as our other services folks, et cetera. And we do that and we compensate them accordingly and we treat them very well because we know that tech support is the key to keeping a long-term customer relationship. Nobody calls tech support when they're having a good day. They call when they're having a problem. And having somebody
It's very true.
who can respond appropriately and be friendly and be approachable and knowledgeable and have a level of trust with the customer that the customer knows you're there for the duration until this problem's solved. And that really is kind of part of our secret sauce, I think, for retaining customers and gaining new ones.
I'm still very surprised, happily surprised that an AI implementation company like yours has human technical support people ready for your customers. I think that's great. And I will say too that this is a very common thread amongst my other conversations in the Think Small podcast with other business leaders, regardless of industry type or business type. There's been a lot of business leaders focusing on that human interaction, that human touch, that relationship aspect of their business that's vital to their business.
Absolutely. I don't want people, our customers, to feel locked in like they use us because they have to use us. They don't have anywhere else to go to support this technology, whatever. That's not ever our thought process. Our thought process is, how do I look at this relationship? How do I look at this action that I'm going to take right now or today or tomorrow? How do I look at these things in the lens of, will that help me help my customer want to work with me? I want them to be excited about working with us because we are a part of their team. And as long as I can help them feel that way, then I know that we'll retain them for a long time.
Yeah. So you say you're in a period of some pretty impressive growth right now, but
Mhm.
what does the future and whatever your long-term planning process or planning horizon looks like, whether it's 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, what does that look like for Keymark and the business?
Um, we have some high aspirations that we've set. We do expect to have a much more significant period of growth over the next few years. Um, and part of that is going to be driven by the fact that we are not only finding best of breed tools to help our customers with, we're also starting to build some of our own tools, which would put us more in the ISV space of being an independent software vendor, which will allow us to look at things like our margins and stuff like that to further fuel growth. And secondly,
Certainly.
we are looking at how do we expand internationally because these problems exist not just in the United States, but they exist
Of
everywhere.
course. Of course.
And that's a really interesting challenge because now we're talking about time zone challenges, potentially language barriers.
Yes.
And so there's all kinds of problems for us to think about, which is going to keep it exciting, that's for sure.
And don't forget cultural barriers.
Correct.
Yeah.
100%.
It's going to be a interesting journey for you for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And it'll be interesting because we really don't have any experience, unlike a lot of software vendors, we don't have any experience offshoring anything. We've always had US based personnel, and we're going to continue that for our US customers. So how do I flip that and say if I've got customers in Latin America,
Right.
you know, US is outsourced for them, right? So
That's very
they
true.
would probably rather talk to somebody in Costa Rica or Argentina or something if that's where they're from. So trying to figure out how to do all that is really going to be a challenge, but we want to have that kind of similar approach of making sure we're meeting our customers where they are, rather than making them come meet us where we are.
Well, I think that's exciting. I wish you all the best of luck, and if there's any help that that a firm like Chief Outsiders can provide relative to your expansion, we'd be happy to have that conversation. But that's great. I mean, you guys are literally in the deep end of a major, I'll call it industrial revolution going on, and I think your future prospects are just couldn't be brighter.
Well, that's thank you. Yeah, we're certainly very excited about it, and you are 100% correct. This is an industrial revolution right now. I think
Absolutely.
things are going to change so rapidly and so dramatically. We're going to look back in 5 years, and it's not going to look anything like it looks today.
So, Cameron, if I may, I want to ask you this question, and that is a lot of folks are talking about AI, and the immediate short-term kind of reaction when they talk about AI's impact on their business is that they feel that it's going to be a immediate reduction in headcount.
Hmm.
But yet there's other folks I'm talking to, especially business leaders on this podcast, that don't really see it that way. They see a different angle on the headcount and employment impact of AI. How does your firm feel about that?
We definitely see it differently. It's funny that something could be a cliche after just a couple of years, but that's how fast things are moving. But there's a cliche
You're
that
right.
AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who understands AI is going to take your job.
Yeah.
And I think that's 100% correct. I think that what AI is going to allow people to do is to do more with the same. I'm not hearing from my customers that they want to reduce headcount, so they're going to apply some automation. What I'm hearing is they want to be better at what they do and they want to be able to do more. And
Right.
it's hard to find the right people. So let's apply technology and make the people I got much more efficient and effective. So that's really what we're seeing. Now, where you might see impacts on jobs, in my opinion, is for those companies that don't embrace the technology. Those companies are going to go away. That's a whole different kind of job reduction. But there are going to be companies that just don't keep up, and they're going to get left behind. And it's going to be the ones that embrace the new technology and that look at it in a way of return on investment and things like that are going to grow.
I was speaking to someone recently in the material handling space, right? So his clients were distribution centers and warehouses. And he sees the future of that world being the dark warehouse,
Hmm.
where literally 1 million square feet warehouse could be managed by 3 humans, where
Hmm.
today it's managed by thousands of
Right.
humans. But he is so excited about this opportunity because he realizes that everything that needs to go into that smart warehouse maybe hasn't even been developed yet,
Right.
or installed, or maintained.
Right.
And he is seeing a whole different. He's taking a very different, more holistic, more future oriented focus on his business and what it will become because of AI, and how there will ultimately be more people, in the workforce. They're just going to be in very different roles. And I love what you said about AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows AI is going to take your job.
Right. Yep. Yeah. It's the key is going to be adaptable. The jobs are going to change. There's no doubt about that. But folks that are adaptable are going to be able to move into these other roles, just like you
Right.
described.
Right.
All right, a robot is doing a warehouse job now. Well, somebody's got to build that robot, right?
Exactly. And
So,
program that robot and
exactly.
install that robot and maintain that robot.
Right. Right. And now with some of the AI tools, particularly around software development, a lot of that development is can be done by folks that don't have a computer science degree, right? It's
Right.
democratizing a lot of that
Yes.
development work and pushing it out to the business units and that sort of thing. So it's not like, you're going to lose job A and then you have to get some advanced degree to find a new job. These tools are going to make it so that folks are, in my opinion, are much more horizontally enabled to move to different roles as they need to.
I agree, and a lot of other folks I'm talking to, especially folks on this podcast, also agree. And I think the world is ripe for this really big opportunity, and we all just need to lean into it and not be scared of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is your
I'm
business going to look differently? Sure, but that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, it is. It's going to look different, but I'm optimistic. I can't approach anything that I see day to day any other way. I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this, and it's all going to come down to how do people embrace it.
Right.
I'm very optimistic.
Right. So may I ask you this one last question, Cameron? In your business, do you have certain types of businesses or industries that you're working with, or your solutions more broad based?
I would say our solutions are quite broad based, and we have a number of different what we refer to as vertical spaces. So
Sure,
we do a lot
sure.
of financial services. I mentioned mortgage processing earlier, but a lot in
Okay, that's right.
services. We do a lot of state government type of stuff, so health and human services type things, county governments. We do a lot in healthcare, so medical records, things of that nature. But the tools themselves can be applied to really any industry. We've chosen those again because we're so people centric, and there's a limit to how many things a person can really be knowledgeable about and have good conversations about. And so rather than try to be a jack of all trades, we've kind of honed our messaging and our business development down to a few verticals that we can feel really comfortable with.
Okay, terrific. So to kind of wrap things up, what kind of advice or words of counsel would you give a small business or mid-sized business leader that's in the thick of this AI transition?
I think that the key is to remain adaptable, but to be inquisitive and creative. It's not that businesses fail because they can't do things. Sometimes they fail because they don't have the imagination to
Hmm.
try new things and to say, I can solve that problem or I can do this work for somebody else. So I think just the key going forward is to be extremely responsive, open-minded, nimble, but above all, adaptable.
I think that's great advice. Cameron, thank you so much for your time today. I think that it was really great to hear from somebody who's in the middle of this this unique space in the middle of this transformational industrial revolution. Again, Cameron Boland with Keymark, and you're the Chief Operating Officer. We can't thank you enough for your time today.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure. Enjoyed it.